Irish line dance. Now that was Charlie just before we met today. That was good. I've infected you.
Credit where credit is credit.
Credit.
You know, that's what they say.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if we've talked about this very much, but Jojo and I are both substitute teachers. Have we talked about this? I don't think we really talked about.
Never comes up. It's a church and state thing.
Yeah.
We also both play D&D.
For the best. But very little in common besides us. the two great bridges.
Yeah.
Teaching and D&D. I'm kidding.
I wonder how many DMs are teachers and teachers are DMs. Probably exactly as many as I would expect.
The joke is that Jojo and I were at one time rivals, enemies, and that teaching and D&D brought us together.
Yeah, I thought neither one of us could live while the other survived. I thought it was a mutual exclusivity thing.
I was gearing up, spy versus spy. Mm-hmm. I didn't intend. I wasn't thinking like,
I had a plan to kill you that was 5 layers of contrivance deep. Like you would keep revealing that you'd outdone me, and I had 5 different things set in place that were actually no, I've outdone you.
Yeah, yours was going to be very much a marshal all the people that I've wronged in my life to create like a sort of assemble a team. Whereas mine was just like kind of hijack a plane and find you.
Not even
like a commercial airline.
No, stop. You're playing on one of my worst nightmares. The fear of if everyone in the world simultaneously knew where I was and wanted to kill me, how long could I survive? And the time is limited by whatever jet airliner is nearest to you.
Oh man, we haven't recorded Ironlight in a minute. I'm happy to be back. God, so much has happened. So much has changed. We were just talking about how the sun has breached, that the Earth has rotated just enough on its axis, where we're on the sunnier side of things. I didn't realize that it actually snows 5 months out of the year in Michigan. That is not true of Ohio.
You get some pretty bad ones. Out of the last 100 years, the last snowfall falls past the April. It was like April 21st. After April 21st, like 50% of the time. And then after May 6th, like a quarter of the time. So you're really not safe for sure until mid-May. Which, here we are.
I'm calling it, folks. If it snows in June, Jojo owes me $4.
Saw it when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Bad.
We're locked in. We got a little bit more time with our intro here. I finished Dune, folks. Big deal there. We both decided on different noises.
Different tracks from the same movie.
Yeah.
Sweet.
And I'm still not motivated to go and watch the movie. I was like far past the point in the book where the movie ends.
Yeah.
And I was watching the movie and I was like, this is boring. This is not interesting to me.
150 minutes of
Dude, the book was cool. I liked the book.
Sweet.
I will not be reading Children of Dune for the time being.
It goes to Messiah next, but
Messiah.
Messiah's harder to read than Children is.
Right now, I'm polishing off on Jojo's recommendation, Winesburg, Ohio.
Oh, which I don't give you easy page to page, like page turners. Like it's Dune and Winesburg, Ohio, and you better take a year to think between each page of both of those texts.
It's strange, man. It's a strange. Both are strange reads. Speaking of eccentric, thought-provoking content, folks.
Wow, pretty easy one there.
Oh shoot, we didn't talk about who's going first.
Oh,
I have no idea who's going first.
I will.
Okay.
It's only the end of Pragasphar.
It's only. Oh my God, guys! This is way more auspicious than I introed it as.
It's okay. It doesn't have to be.
This is it, you guys. This is the end of an era. If you've been watching with us, congrats. But this show is about me, and I am very sad to confront another ending of Pragasphar.
Oh, come no. It's not that bad. I have a little more to talk about the campaign, like big term behind the screens. That'll take up another Ironlight or two, so.
Sure.
By no means have we left the place in terms of thought, but once the campaign is done and Ironlight is done, it truly and honestly is a history of our friend group. Like it is a dusty tome on a shelf in our foyer. Like
who knows what we'll come up with next.
Who's to say?
I certainly don't.
But let's get into it. The final installment, the last chapter of Pragasphar, of the Pragasphar campaign of Foreboding International. That is Dr. Claymore Patch, the inimitable, sulky space surgeon dirt boy, the cow, reverie, monk, peace, cleric guy, lights, bangles, healing, lion-hearted, southern accented dude, and Baragon Emberclaw, the Machiavellian, righteous Lion King, fighter boy of Sky Dragon. So this is it for them. The three of them meet the end of their journey here, and we open this session with Baragon Emberclaw as king, as newly crowned and momentarily redeemed king of the Nyxfair Republic. He has just beaten Claymore Patch to the ground. Claymore Patch, who a moment ago killed Prince Parlous. Like, the crown is just passing from hand to hand in a really hearty initiative. And at the end of it, not unlike the passing of the Monarch in Magic the Gathering, whenever you take damage, you're not the Monarch anymore. Everyone's been punched but Baragon. He's the king now. So Baragon sits atop this airship. The city of Arkancelis is obliterated by Tiamat. And if any of this sounds strange to you, just bear with me. Like, we're just at this point in the story. The party has to face off against Tiamat. The session starts with this giant 5-headed dragon Hydra Queen turning its heads towards the airships. And we can't have these small inter-person squabbles anymore. Either the party acts as a unit, or they die, like, momentarily. So, Max, as Baragon in character, wasting no time, takes to command of the air fleets. He situates Cow and Patch with their own ship, each astride his. The Broomhilda, the Vanguard ship, named after Legends of the Galactic Heroes, Vanguard ship, flagship of the same name. And they make west, so that Baragon can meet up with the Sultan of Dunving. He made this deal, remember, last session, in a brief teleportation interlude over to Dunving. He made this arrangement with the Sultan there, who has this power over the sandworms of the desert. The party encountered them in probably what was the first session of the Ironlight show, where I talked about Pragasphar. Beautiful. The party encountered these sandworms, which answer to him, the Sultan. Baragon made this arrangement with him that, hey, if we get the Dragon Queen down in the dirt, you better call in your desert power. Like, you better have your boys swallow that thing up so it can't get back up in the air. And he was like, cool, I got you. You return my daughter to me. Fetch quests, long term, we're great.
Centira created Tirglin to test the faithful.
There you have it. I love Dune so much, and I was so hot off of it is when I was designing Pragasphar for the first time. All big scale, long-term influential stuff. But the party sails in these airships above the clouds into a storm front with Tiamat taking to the air behind them. We're in initiative. I mean, Claymore Patch, first thing he does is abandons his ship. He says, go home. Like, save your lives. And at the end of the day, like, the party worked really, really hard. They didn't save that many people. Like, a lot of people
Oh my
died
god.
wherever you guys went. They died in Dunving. They died in, I guess, Eriswyle was a pretty good success, but you really botched Arkansas. Patch saves a couple soldiers here. He's like, just get out of it. I can fly now. Like, go home if there's a home left to go to. So Patch is just flying in the storm. Cal's trying to play a right second man to Baragon, like trying to keep this thing together. And there's
as a horseman,
yeah.
I changed to Pegasus in anticipation of having to teleport, and also for the extra HP for a plan that I'll reveal, or JoJo, I'm sure will.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, Cal Reverie had with those new tattoos with Staff of the Granite Peaks, which you did not crutch on at all. Used it for flavor, which I have immense respect for. And Baragon up at the helm. The party sails west. There's a long, like, skill challenge initiative thing. The stakes are crazy high. I mean, Patch is just this lone man in the storm, like, creating giant bars of iron to draw the lightning and, like, trying to grab onto Tiamat and, like, hold onto the leg and make whip marks and stuff. It's just cool. And then the ships are, like, only identifiable in the storm by their little red beacons on each of them. And as you look back, they flicker and go out, and like bursts of flame and ice and lightning crackling because of Tiamat. It was so much fun to narrate. I used so many adjectives in the span of like 20 minutes. Super gratuitous.
Really fabulous and very flexible theater of the mind combat. Stuff that I would be super uncomfortable, and that my party would be super uncomfortable navigating.
It was story. It was just theater. But eventually, they break out of the storm. They're over the sand dunes. They've crossed most of Tyrridland. And they're at the border of the desert. It's time to ground this dragon. There's one airship left. And doing so isn't going to prove an easy task. However, each of the party members has a plan to stopping Tiamat. The plans don't necessarily work together that well, but they each have their own. And Cal's is the main one. Cal's plan is to use his weapon, Rosenreach, the Heaven Ward, this magical item designed for this purpose, basically, to use its song effect to make the dragon peaceful, to make it dormant. It has this ability. What was it called? How do I not remember the coolest ability I've ever come up with?
Oh, the song.
Omega-Lex Sonata or something.
The Omega-Lex Sonata.
The Omega-Lex Sonata.
Originally by
Severo Maravilla.
Yeah.
Baragon's character, a bard from the one-shot, who finally gets to come back in full force. His character was famous for creating the most beautiful song that could ever exist in Pragasphar. It is musical perfection. I mean, mathematical and aesthetic and hermeneutical perfection. It could not be bettered. So this song, once played, causes a save DC of charisma in whoever hears it as its target against, and it's a little complicated, the damage that the shield has prevented. When you prevent damage with the shield, it gets more powerful. It can play a more powerful song. Such that, don't worry about the mechanics of it so much. It basically means Cal Reverie needs to get hit really hard with one attack and only one attack. Like, he needs to be hit to a super low level of HP and not die for this shield to have enough charge that he can compel Tiamat to make a saving throw that even Tiamat with like plus 20 to every save is going to fail. Right. So that's Cal's plan. Cal's plan is get down on the desert, stand his ground, bait the dragon down, and get hit by it. Baragon's plan is land the dragon in the sand, call in your sandworm favor. Have those sandworms, like, eat it and drag it below the surface. Claymore Patch's plan is to use Heptophobia. And that's his new ability of the Dusk Lash when it entered its Exalted form. Whenever you hit something 7 times, whatever you hit dies, regardless of any effect. So the party crashes the ship down into the ground. Cal sprawls onto the sand. Baragon's on the sand right behind him. There's a moment of like chase with Tiamat flying just above the desert level, and Baragon on his wyvern like getting snapped at the tail of. Super
with the
cool.
Chakram just like zooming behind him as he flies.
So cool. So cool. So finally, Baragon pivots 180s, faces the dragon, hits with both of his chakrams, his big one-time attack from these new items he picked up. Dragon hits the ground, and who's standing right there in front of it but Cal Reverie, shield in hand, just standing, just waiting, just heels buried in the dust, watching storm clouds rolling overhead. Claymore Patch apparently gone, but as we know, hiding on Tiamat's back left leg. And he stands there, and Tiamat cocks back the head and delivers. We roll straight from the character sheet, or the stat block, I guess.
Hundreds of damage.
It was somewhere in the 120 range. It was 121 to 127. I don't remember for sure. But through maybe a little bit of cleric health prevention, skewing damage, anticipation, I mean, it's on the money.
And my single favorite spell in D&D that Jeremy Crawford would roll around in his grave if he were dead, if he heard about Delay, third level cleric. I love it, dude.
How did I forget that Delay was wrapped up in this chicanery? A Delay is a time domain cleric spell of my old PC's creation from a former campaign. Kane Christopher had this spell. You use your reaction to prevent damage, and you begin holding concentration, and if you drop concentration, the damage resolves normally. But if you can hold concentration for the duration of the spell, you can dissipate the damage. So cool. And you delay, you shield, you get away, you take this huge hit, you send it back. Tiamat fails the saving throw massively. And so what have we now but the Dragon Queen, the Doom of Pragasphar, made pacifist. It can no longer willingly harm another living thing. So it snaps its giant jaws at Cal. It even like drops its head to engulf him and tears its teeth into the sand in a ring around him and pulls back and stomps up to him and hisses and roars and screams and fires lightning into the air, and it can't do anything to him. The beast is beaten, in effect. So, Claymore Patch, having over the course of this long session trailing this thing, like holding on for dear life, has put 6 marks onto its leg and beckons its attention before putting the 7th. Tiamat rolls its giant furious heads, like bending owl-like back upon him. And he says, leave. He says, go, be gone. Never return to this place. Like, never hurt another thing. And you'll live. And Tiamat just didn't give a shit. Just kept hissing and roaring at him. So he cracks the whip one last time, marks it as dead. Tiamat falls down to the sand, and what would have been an evil body from the 7 hells, 9 hells of Avernus, is slowly dragged under the sand by sandworms, which vibrate such that things can sink into the sand. It was beautiful. It was wonderful. The party beats Tiamat and saves the mortal plane of Pragasphar. But there's one thing left to do. And the celebration after Tiamat is momentary at best, because Baragon and Cal never get to reunite with Claymore Patch. Claymore Patch, seeing the beast felled, pops a flask out of his poisoner's kit, downs it, and drops dead. He knows that the final confrontation yet awaits them at Mount Lear. Anagram for real, shares a name with King Lear from the Shakespearean play of The White Cliffs of Dover and The Father Falling Beyond Death. Patch knows that here awaits Emery Spade and Arlen Lauder in the final conflict. The party sees this and goes to join him. Baragon gets this really nice reveal when he goes to take his own life. When he sets the chakrams into the air as if to dispel them away, and they destroy him. They tear him asunder. They churn into him like these chainsaws, because when he created them, they were a weapon designed to save Pragasphar. But in the book, right? In the big book, capital T, capital B, the book. And the way to save Pragasphar, as they were destined to do, was apparently to kill Baragon. It doesn't get a lot of notice. But Baragon goes under. How did Cal take his life, Charlie? Was it Baragon as well?
Cal spoke Baragon's true name. And then, as the Sultan shook Cal to prevent him, and Cal winced in anticipation, spoke his own.
That was sick. That was sick. The true name in
that was such cool role plays. The Sultan just like, no man, what are you doing? Stop this! And Cal just whispers Charlie.
And it hits
and
like
the
a
Sultan
bass
is now
drum.
just holding a lifeless corpse.
It was so cool. Says his own true name, expels or like reveals his inner self to the outer world. And in doing so creates a paradox. Charlie cannot know Cow is Charlie, and Cow cannot know Charlie is Cow. So when they are forced to share a plane together, one of them is shunted out, and Cow ceases to be in the physical plane of Pragasphar. Super sweet. And the party dies and wakes up gradually. Patch first, but his friends shortly behind him. Wakes up into the afterlife, in effect. A place they've been before. The precipice of Mount Lear, the plateau, wherein all things that have died in Pragaspar get to choose how they will proceed on into some higher realm or be reborn, or basically people and demons and angels they've offended or befriended in their lives come to bid for their souls or do combat for their souls or something. They encounter Emery Spade here, inhabited by Arlen Lauder, who has a firm vice control over her. Reno, her son, waits at the edge of the plateau, watching. And it's sad. Everyone's dead, and it sucks. But there's a long dialogue with Arlen Lauder, wherein she reveals that her motivation this entire time has been that she got a sense of Pragasfar's unrealness, Pragasfar's fictiveness, that it was created. And she can't handle being a made-up thing of a greater being. It doesn't sit well with her. She doesn't think that everyone in the world deserves to be a pawn in the greater weaving of some other story made to please like a few locuses of humanity, right?
And to villainize yourself, Judge.
It is the DM made evil, right? Puppeting my own hand. It's Arlen Lauder saying there are ethics to the things we create. You cannot just create these people with these conflicts that torment them and put them through hell. It's less real to you. But if they are real, it is real to them. So this is like her argument for the ethics of suffering characters, for creating incomplete or damaged worlds. And she hates me for it, and she definitely hates the party for it. And she wants it all to end. She wants us to return to being us, let this story be an old story, and move on. Cal makes a very impassioned speech in which you are less Cal by every word and more Charlie by every word. And the boundaries have been so disseminated at this point, it almost doesn't matter. But Cal makes these really firm arguments for, how should I put it? Instead of Arlen treating everyone in the world as lesser because they are created by some higher thing, to treat themselves as celebration of the complexity of those higher things, right? As to like you are no less, it's just that we contain multitudes, is how my dumb poet Whitman-esque brain parsed it. It was beautiful. And I won't condescend to narrate the effect of the entire speech, because anything shorter than it cannot convey what it conveyed. It was masterfully done. There's a long dialogue. Baragon realizes he will be confronting his father and his patrilineal tribe. And it comes down to Patch, who receives the last words of Arlen Lauder, knowing she is a lost, silly thing, and that it is time for her to move on. She is well outnumbered and outmanned, and there's no fight left to win. She warns Claymore Patch, who has, at this point, unknowingly become the DM. When he put the Torstone into himself, the soul of Pragasphar began to merge with his own, and the world became less mine. I became more of the former NPCs, and Patch's PC, or Patch as PC, became Houston. So the last maybe thing that I said as DM or the first I said as a player, was as Rectress Arlenlotter warning Claymore Patch. And she said her warning to be heeded was the lesson that she derived from Pragasphar, which is to say, do not, I warn you thrice, do not create anything that cannot have a chance at redeeming itself. Do not create anything that suffers hopelessly, or may a sickness fall upon you and your household in this or any world. Don't create something just to suffer in front of you, just to have strokes and dance like these cartwheels of death. Don't create something just to suffer for your entertainment. This warning she gave him and disappeared. Claymore Patch decided to stay on Mount Lear at the gates of the afterlife and ease the passing of everything to die in Pragasphar again. Cal Reverie went into the astral sea to face the lonely in one final confrontation, wherein he, now the master of all worlds, used his last bond ability, whatever you'll have it called, and could create Korik, could create Salik, could create any version of you that had ever existed. And you brought all of them with you to face the lonely. And by watching you create so many dimensions of yourself, the lonely too, this sick creature that had only been evil and tried to keep people close to itself, tried to draw them near it, realized it could make versions of itself, began making like little versions of itself out of mud in the astral sea, out of clay, and started making its own friends to keep it company. And thus it was resolved, and Cal walked on into the ether. And Baragon returned to the mortal realm of Pragasphar to assume his seat as de facto king of the world. And it made me really, really happy how Max narrated Baragon's end days. Not as the fierce warrior king that he was gearing up to being in these moments of intense conflict, but that he wizened with age, that he grew to see his young self as a fool, that he ruled amicably and learned the nuances of court and accepted parliaments and reason. And there was a brief moment of conflict where Mislin tried to kill him as well, but he turned Mislin into an asteroid. And now there's a sorcerer orbiting around Pragasphar. Don't worry about it. It was a cool afterthought, a conflict that Houston ran as DM, sort of as a nod to his new authority. And the campaign ended with a scene from far in the future, wherein Arlo Fix and Emery Spade, since retired from all adventure and fighting and living a silly, small domestic life, probably still wrapped up in the works of nobles because they're at some gala, but probably as little as they can be. They walk around this party where Baragon is somehow invited. Like, the king makes an appearance. What are the odds? Everyone's freaking out. And Arlo Fix, he does his Sherlock Holmes. He walks through the crowd. He dips out. Like, Emery doesn't see him leave. And he catches powder off of, like, a baguette or whatever. And, like, he flours his face and makes himself look strange. He, like,
snatches a hat off of a drunken sleeping patron and flips his coat inside out. And
so much fun to visualize. And by the time Baragon passes him, has a strange voice on and addresses him weirdly. And Baragon, Max, ever the role player, says, "It's good to see you, Arlo." And passes on anyways. And when Baragon dies, he doesn't die a warrior's death. And Arlo Fix, he lives. He has a wife and a son. And how strange that the campaign should end on a note of him, the same person with whom it began. Go figure. Everything ended up in its right place. And the world, which was dubious since its creation, which was built on a slant, which was designed to always be falling apart, which was a question, a paradox of why we make fantasy in the very first place, it spun on. It resolved neatly. And it was a beautiful, wonderful final session. My players applauded me, which is such a strange thing, but meant so much. and came from nowhere. That was Pragasphar. Now for our regularly scheduled ad break, wherein I cry.
I'll see you in a minute, George.
Full Metal Alchemist.
Full Metal Alchemist?
I've had to confront the ending of Pragasphar twice. This is my second time, or rather, before our little ad break was the second time. It's Jojo and I had, we would check in with each other periodically over those next few weeks. How are you? How are you? Like 1 week after Pragasphar, post 2 weeks after Pragasphar. Do you mourn Cal? Do you mourn Baragon? Do you mourn the world? And it was a mixture, man. It was some of everything. Jojo did a great job of helping us all die, which is something I've never imagined I could or would do with my worlds or my people or my characters. And I was happy to let Cal go, but there's oh shit, I didn't start the time, whatever. And there's really no describing that little silence after the world just sort of tapered off. And the conclusion of Pragasphar was that it spun on. All of us had these jolly little grins on our faces and looking at each other and trying not to maintain eye contact too long. And so we grinned at the walls and at the ceiling and out the window. But in this moment, the person for whom I was saddest, who I really thought was behind me, who I really thought wasn't going to play that big of a part in my world or in my campaign, in my career in D&D or in Pragasphar, or in my head, or in your head, Joj, was Arlo Fix.
Yeah.
And Reno Spade, and Emery Spade. I'm so sad that Cal and Arlo really didn't ever get to talk much. But in that moment, when Arlen, I think Arlen and the Lonely were on kind of very similar coins, if not on either side of both. They had to look Cal and Arlo and Salik and Korik and Charlie in the eyes. They were just outnumbered. There was no choice. It was a special thing, man.
The way you described
what is there to say?
Us in that last moment, that's beautiful. That's exactly what it was. Just in a sunlit room, like the sun is setting. It's almost dark, and we're just, I don't know, we're all there. Max drove in some epic crusade to get there, and
yeah, dude. That was, Max was originally going to be online for the last session of Pragasphar because his car got a boot on the tire. And we knew that we were going to have to take a break so that he could go get his car. And so he calls us off like 15 minutes into the session. He's like, I have to go get my car. We were like, okay, yeah, we'll wait. We like toiled over an online setup, and Jojo's brother brought the sound bar, and we toggled a mic so that it wouldn't get feedback from the music and from the voice audio. And there Max materializes into Midland.
He saw his empty spot in the Discord call, and he says he was compelled.
He takes his seat on the throne. He had to.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. But we all assembled in that little room, and just, damn, man, I don't remember. It was a tapering off. It was like I was narrating things that ended in Pragasphar, kind of, and kind of throwing it to Houston and kind of taking it back, and eventually I just got kind of quiet and I was like, it's been an honor. Which it had and still has been. So
And there Claymore Patch sat on his little love seat, the end of the world. And Cal visited with his loved ones in their dreams. And Baragon was the good king.
Speaking of good kings, the
the Empress, Netheria.
nice.
Everything everywhere. All at once, man.
Yeah.
What do the brains and bots have left? They're staring down an open rainbow bridge chasm into the earth where they lost some of their loved ones. And my party look up from their computers at their walls, out their windows, and they wonder too, what's left? Do we go down into this hole? Do we leave our loved ones to whatever fate must be befalling them down there? And Sly Honorlock almost just Lorelai's Kane Christopheries into the hole.
Leroy Jenkins.
But my party has so little tolerance for being separated. Not because there's any sort of love, but because it's just inconvenient for the sake of gameplay. I don't know. Something, our agreement in Targona that we would do errands all together instead of splitting up for them. Something. You get it. It was just too many players. And they make a plan. I actually decided this for them. They decided they wanted some downtime. The players all decided they wanted downtime for their characters at the beginning of Arc 3. And so after they resolved not to go down into the Maze of the Damned for a second trip, they went their separate ways. Gleason, Flintheart, had a relatively quiet few days. He fished, he built a watch. Rusty had been destroyed in the battle, and so he built a little bird companion he called Kiwi. Am I missing something? Something cool happened. Something cool happened that I totally missed. I'll have to mention it later. Let me write it down. That's fine. Something about the Progenitora and Rusty. Gleason Steel Defender. Anyway, and Gleason, it's very tranquil. It's a very like Wes Andersonian like routine that he tries to find again back in Tier. Sly Honorlock, on the other hand, has quite an internal and eventful few days. She intends to go back to Tier to see her siblings. But it's now two people that have heard her, that have told her, the longer you're alive and the longer you do this work, the more you endanger the lives of your loved ones. And so instead, she chooses not to see her family.
That's the hero problem. There you go.
The hero problem. Zechuk, the Mist Titan, now a part of the Range of Giants, and Harris Birch both. They asked the brains and bots again and again, why do you hide your faces? Why don't you? Aren't you worried for your loved ones? Aren't you worried about being seen and threatened? And aren't you worried about losing? And some of them are, but some of them are and haven't realized it, but Sly Honorlock realized that she was scared. Crust, the warrior king, or the warrior chieftain, I would say, makes a great pilgrimage to his peoples. Visits the old Iron Tribe and picks through the debris, and also goes to visit the river folk River Woodians, and kind of checks up on how everybody's doing and how the new government's going along, the new council system, in lieu of having a king. And spends time with his people. He also spends time among the Range of Giants, studying what was left, what became of the Range of Giants, and supernaturally or not, learned a little giant himself. He had a cool little sort of spiritual awakening among the place where giants walked. It kind of an homage to all the time he spent with Zechuk one-on-one in the second arc of the campaign.
Cool. I like that little payoff. That's sweet.
It was his idea, so credit to Zach Nordstrom, clever fella. Kartikeya just goes all over the fucking place. He goes to the Iron Tribe. He goes back to the workshop, to the fortress where he and the other Warforged were created. He goes back to Meridian, to the palace, all in an effort to figure out whose authority to honor. Because for the entire course of Kartikeya's existence, he's always comfortably deferred decisions to people he perceives to have been more worthy to make them. Sentient, he imagined, warm-blooded, flesh and blood people that had more on the line, he imagined, than he did about the future. He realized that his party members were fallible. He realized that his creator Shrek was fallible, and so he was decided that he needed to find someone new to trust, someone new to believe in. He was left deprived of his supreme fiction when Shrek revealed himself as a cleric of Neome and disappeared down into the Maze of the Damned. And Keith Cruz traveled to the Feywild and to the University of Kilkerran, affectionately named after a setting in Murrah, to research, to figure out what the hell is going on. Mac, ever the inquisitive, Bardlock, and leaning in, I think, a lot to the tropes of warlocks, which is this insatiable hunger for knowledge, discovers a few things. Chief among them that as every civilization, from what he can tell, has had a falling out with the gods. And that many of the gods in all of the pantheons described in those civilizations have a lot of overlap. Talk of Iyun, the knowing mistress, and different gods over the years. Keith starts to make some connections that maybe other scholars haven't over the course of those days toiling in the library. And that was fun. That was a fun little thing to write to him. And I had a fun time kind of running some short vignettes where they kind of run across each other in their one-on-one journeys.
Oh, that's awesome! What?
Like
sections.
Kartikeya's because Kartikeya went to go and visit the Iron Tribe, just to kind of understand authority and organized decision making in politics. And Crust is there, and they have like a little conversation before that, and then Sly and Gleason are both in Tyr, where it all started around the same time, and they chat briefly about what they got up to. But Glayson's a man of generally few words, and Sly is wary of sort of his grand, wizened mysteriousness. And Keith is sort of left to his own devices because he's so mobile, and he is a Pegasus and all. But the party convenes because of an invitation they all received from one Mayor Bernie Buttigieg in the city of Tyr. And he's invited all of them because he needs help with something. And he's very unspecific as to what. And so they... excuse me. They gather on a little private beach in front of the mayor's mansion.
Mayor Buttigieg's mansion.
Mayor Buttigieg's mansion, Bernie Buttigieg.
You just Google like Pete Buttigieg's actual mansion and then port it over.
I didn't know. I didn't know that Buttigieg had a mansion. That was just a funny name.
I don't either. Just maybe. No, stick with the name. You get the best of him with the name, I think.
I agree. And there the party finds themselves with some time apart, a little bit wiser. And they're shepherded in. They find Bernie bedridden. They find Bernie Buttigieg bedridden. They're like, what? Like, what's going on? And he's like, oh, well, I thought you were here. I thought you needed some help, and that I was, I'm here to help. So
don't you dare use that voice. What
is it you all needed? You were in the time of crisis. And of course the party, looks across at each other confused and amused. And they're like, no, Bernie, you called us here because you said you needed help. And he prattles on, makes excuses, and finally confesses that he had a major heart attack, that he wasn't sure he was going to make it out. And the party's like offering condolences, and they're glad he's well. And then he asks to speak with Gleason in private, the aging dwarf. And so the party go out and make themselves comfortable in the mayor's mansion. And Gleason sort of one-on-one apologizes for the whole charade. And Gleason asks why he invited them in particular. And Bernie confesses that not even his own wife or daughter came to join him after, it's revealed that when he had the heart attack, he was shipped out to a hospital at the University of Kilkerran where both his wife and daughter live, and neither of them came to check up on him. And that was because he was a bad man. Back in his original political career, he confesses that he prioritized his career and diplomats over his own family, and so he estranged them. And of course, this was me kind of sowing doubt in Gleason's heart about everything that had happened with his brother and with mortality and getting older and everything, a prelude to what was to come, as the little watch he built starts to tick down. We'll leave it at that for today. I will say that most of that stuff happened out of game. The party, each individual member of our game got to write about what they were going to do over the course of the few days. So I got to read what they wrote.
Oh, very cool, Charlie. Less of a campaign diary, more of a diary.
More of a diary.
A diary of diaries.
The next couple of sessions are going to be sort of like in-betweens, or not in-betweens. They're going to be a little bit more domestic. The party's going to be just traveling around Josadius and trying to make sense of what's left.
That's a good change of pace.
This arc 3 is an adventure on my end to give the party even more freedom than they've ever had, with the ability to teleport, with the Pegasus, I guess sort of what's an omnicorn by their side, I guess is the proper term.
Very nice.
And so the next session I'll get into is they venture to University of Kilkerran to do some research, and they spend a whole session there. Which is
mad respect for the campaign lull, to be able to lull and then accelerate again into the final act. That's really cool. It happens in stories all the time, but in D&D, you feel the need for raising stakes at any given moment.
They see some familiar faces. They meet some new folks. It was a really fun session, and I'm excited. I'm excited to tell it. But Joach, I want to say again, Pragasphar was a game changer. It inspired a lot of what will come to be my next project after we say goodbye to the brains of bots. And and I want to kind of mention some reactions to the things that you described in your sort of final synopsis. Chief among them, you mentioned the cost of lives, that Cal and Barragon and Patch did a pretty bad job saving people, except for Patch, sending that one ship home.
But when
yeah,
it was rough sometimes. It was really rough.
I think all three of us were acutely aware of how little control we had. Even Barragon, in some way, that like warrior mantra of lives will always be lost, or will always be collateral damage in the wake of change, was sort of a twisting of like, how much can you really control? People are going to die. Cal knew that too as a diplomat. He had to arbitrate over murderers.
Yeah.
Patch, a gravedigger, intimately acquainted with death. And there's a reason why there was never like a montage of us like weeping in our like as we're trying to sleep about all the
Good
lives
point.
we've lost, except for when Patch was summoning followers of the king to go and sacrifice themselves and immolate themselves. I think Cal had a little bit of a moment with that. But after that, it was like, I think all three of us had an understanding.
That's true. It is a campaign that began on the brink of war, went into war, and saw it through to the end. Like, it was rough, and it was not... You didn't have any kids in this party. There was no coming-of-age style 19-year-old character. I mean, there was no Kane Christofori, definitely no drummer. Like, there wasn't anyone soft here.
Barragon was a man who lost much. Cal, haunted by demons he'd had since he was a child, and Patch, hundreds, however old, at least 100. Don't know if we ever worked that out.
But it was a damn good story. It was a damn good story. I'm with you on that.
The final boons.
The
final bond abilities. Is that what they were?
They were... I think they might have been the exalted abilities of your weapons, actually.
The exalted abilities. Cal, the lore master.
So cool.
Do you remember what Patch and Barragon's were?
Patch's was Final Fantasy II. It made him the DM. And Barragon's was Orbital 2, which is a callback to the ability that Claymore Patch got, the bond ability Claymore Patch got. It's his ability to do what the gods of Pragasphar have been doing for a long time and make a moon, if he so desired. And he made a moon out of Mizland.
Out of Mizland.
Stupid.
That'll be something that legends are written about in Pragasphar.
It was cool. It was fun to have this little initiative where Barragon just lifts him into the sky, and the sorcerer just flings magic down for until his range ends, and he's lifted into orbit. So fun.
I do want to say that I planned for Cal to kill the Lonely. At the end of this, I planned for there to be one last big initiative, a la Salik, confronting.
You think you could have taken it? Really?
The confronting the tyrannical elder of his village.
Yeah.
But I didn't even learn the lesson that Cal taught you, which is that, like, Cal, as much as we fight, Cal's always going to find a diplomatic way out. Like, it's ridiculous. We have just short of the amount of time we have left on the Zoom call, so don't worry.
Beautiful.
It was really special, man, to watch the world learn this about itself, and for Cal to sort of be this abiding, everywhere, everything, all at once sort of person.
A creature comes to know itself in the universe, and a universe comes to know itself in us people. So, how funny.
How funny. How beautiful it was that Savro Maravilla and Mizlin and Arlo Fix awoke in place of the people that had just died. to the dismay of the Sultan, they just sort of got up out of the sand in the deserts of Dunebang, and we're back. They were released from their pact that they made with Arkansas. They were freed from their duality prisons.
Mm-hmm. It was funny. It was really funny. I think there was a bit where the Sultan was carrying the weapons, and it turns into him like holding the very like cartoon Looney Tunes kind of bit. Very nice.
Yeah. That was such a beautiful thing that Arlo walked again, and his family was a man to lose. He lost so much, and he got it back. You know,
the Gambit.
That was a really beautiful. That was a really beautiful magic that we could indulge in a world. Another great power of fantasy and of make believe and pretend is to give people back things that in real life they'd never be able to get back. Right. And the last little thing I want to debrief with you about JoJo is the villain, the arch nemesis of Pragasphar. You could say it was any number of people. You could say it was Ironlight, or you could say it was
Bleakwood, Tiamat, Parlous.
Bleakwood,
yeah,
Tiamat, absolutely. Parlous. But I think you realized it, and then I realized it, and then I kept realizing it, that I think you made yourself the villain of Pragasphar.
I tried my best to. 100%.
I think Arlen and Parlous were all iterations of yourself rebelling against these things you wondered. These things about which you wondered whether they were actually worthy or special. And so I guess my question to you, Joe, is, at one time, and I've mentioned this before, at one time before any of this, before Ironlight, before Pragasphar, when there were still World Building Wednesdays, you said, Charlie, I graduated with an English degree, and part of me is like, we got to stop indulging in stories. We gotta just live. We gotta just live in the present. We gotta make life happen. We gotta spend time with real people and go make real things happen. Go to work, and start families. And so Pragasphar is my challenge to try and convince myself that this is worth anything. And so my question is, George, was it worth anything?
I mean, we played it, right? It's a really simple premise. I have doubts, I have suspicions about this thing we put so much creative time and so much soul into. It's beautiful. It has amazing after effects. It makes people come together. I've always known that's a good thing. But versus actually existing and furthering our real selves, I was like, is there any need for that second layer, for that charade? So I bring together my best role players and throw them into a game, like all of my best role players except one. And I say, show me, in effect, right? I set the stage and I watch. And, well, don't you know it? I was dazzled. Too dazzled to ever doubt it. It was beautiful, Charlie. I will play D&D again. I will wake and go into the world and read Keats again. And you know what? A day is a long unit of time. So you can live your own life and still indulge in poetry and stories and fantasies. It's fine. Nobody's pruning every moment of their day to try and trim out the fat. And if you are, I mean, fuck, walk in a park. Like, breathe oxygen, look up every now and then. So Pragasphar was me looking up. It was awesome.
We've got less than 2 minutes left, and so I'll say my closing words, and I'll give you yours, Joge, because you've earned them.
Would you dearly?
I knew a girl, the lab manager at the Stigmatized Sexualities Lab, Intersectional Women's Studies Psychology Lab in undergrad.
Cecilimka?
Right. Shoshana was her name, and she budgeted out every hour of her day, down to showers and naps. And so I would repeat, Joge, what you just mentioned. Walk in a park. go to a bar and sit and talk to a stranger.
Yeah.
Live. You've earned it. And I'll pass it over to you, Judge.
Hey, there you have it, man. The opening to About a Boy, really great movie. Starts out with what's his face English dude that stutters all the time as part of his bit, just going through his day on a scheduled basis. It's silly, but I'm sure it works for some folks. Different strokes for different folks. I am so pro existence. Everything that I love is so life affirming that I keep steamrolling more and more into this crazy, colorful existence. Everything everywhere all at once.
That's what I wish for you, Judge, is that you are periodically over the course of your life reassured. I will say goodbye this week to
Who's left?
Sam.
Oh, Sam, you watch Ironlight?
I don't know if he does.
Buddy boy.
I'm saying goodbye anyway. Sam Sheepick.
So long now.